I'm Dr. Amber Wright, and this is Say More, a podcast for accomplished women who want more honesty in the way they live, love, and lead. This is a space for us to explore the questions that shape our lives and deepen our connections with ourselves and each other. If you're finally ready to reclaim the parts of yourself you've given away to everything and everyone else, you're in the right place. It's time to choose yourself. It's time to say more. Hey friend, welcome back to another episode of Say More with Dr. Amber. Today we are going to have a conversation about trusting your own voice. So we're going to be saying more about how to trust your own voice. And this is another topic that is so important to me because of my own experience with learning how to trust my voice, which we'll get into in a second. But you might have been there before where you know that you have something to say. You know how you feel, you know what you're clear on what your thoughts are, but when it's actually time to speak up, you freeze, your palms might get sweaty, or you start that spin cycle in your brain of wondering what the person's going to say or how you're going to be perceived. And that keeps you from actually saying what you need to say. Don't worry, girl. I have been there, or guys, because I don't want to assume that only women listen to this podcast, but you know, we might have had some experiences with that. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, because of course like I mentioned, have my own experiences with it, and I see it in my clients and stuff like that. And so I want to help you understand how you got there and then what to do about it, of course, because that's how we do things here on Say More with Dr. Amber. We don't just talk about our problems. We have practical steps to apply to change our lives. All right. So here's what might be going on. I think that when I see people who struggle with trusting their own voice, what likely happened is that somewhere along your journey of your life, you learned that your voice wasn't to be trusted. Okay, that I call it pressing the mute button. Somewhere in your life or at some point, someone pressed the mute button on your voice by telling you that you were too sensitive or too dramatic, too much, too emotional, that you even talk too much or you're too loud. Why are you asking all them questions? Things like that. And maybe this happened when you were a child or a young person. I mean, this is very common amongst children, especially if you grew up in a Black family. You know, there's this idea that children are too, and this is not true for every Black family, so I'm not trying to make generalizations here, but it is something that a lot of my black friends, we all have in common. There's this idea that children are to be seen and not heard. So literally, that thinking is intended to keep you still and silent. Stop making all that noise. Stop asking all these questions. Go outside. You know, leave me be. Don't talk to me, or don't talk so much. Or maybe you got in trouble for talking too much in class. Whatever the case may be. But again, at some point, you learned the behavior of self-doubt. And if somebody taught you in one way or another that it wasn't worth it to speak up, or maybe you did say something and you were challenged or dismissed, that can also lead you to believe that, well, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to change. Nobody's going to do anything. So it's not even worth it. It's not worth speaking up. And before you know it, you're a grown up and you still have that way of thinking. You don't address issues when they need to be addressed. You don't draw clear boundaries with people, and you are uncomfortable with that. You don't want to live that way, but you don't know what to do about it because it's just been your default setting your whole life. And so those are some of the ways in which we can see that you don't know how to trust your own voice. And what I want you to know is when you do that, you give your power away. And how that played out for me when I was a kid was my mom, you know, I grew up in a single parent household, and I just want to acknowledge how hard of a job that is. Parenting by itself is really difficult, but when you are the default parent and you're solely responsible for the care and feeding of your children and building a life for them, you know, I recognize that I'm sure she was really stressed, and there are a lot of challenges, you know, with being a single mom. So I can acknowledge that. But at the same time, in my experience and just in my perspective of my childhood is that my mother needed to be needed. She had a massive abandonment wound, and the way that she expressed that wound was by creating this unhealthy codependency in me on her for everything. Like I had to go to her for everything. And while that's also part of the job description, when you are responsible for minor children, you're the one responsible for all of the decisions concerning them. I think that there's a way to approach it that should encourage kids to think for themselves and learn how to make healthy decisions. And I don't think that she did that. And so when our relationship became strained when I was a young adult and there was time and distance between us, I didn't know how to trust my own voice. I didn't know how to trust my instinct. I didn't have my power. I didn't know how to step in. I didn't even know what self-power was or self-awareness in that way. I had no real sense of connection to who Amber was as a person because, again, for so much of my life, I was dependent on my mom to make every decision concerning me and my personhood. So I was woefully unprepared for young adulthood because when I was just like thrust out of a cannon and suddenly now responsible exclusively and fully for myself, but then I wasn't sure of myself. And that's what happens when people teach you how not to trust yourself. And I'll talk a little bit in a moment about how I'm trying to correct that for my kids. Well, not correct it for them, but show them a different way and teaching them how to learn how to think for themselves in really simple ways. But when you don't know how to trust your own voice, then if you were like me, then you outsource that knowing. And that's what I mean by giving your power away. Now, suddenly you are looking to other people. I was looking for another grown-up, another adult to tell me what to do. But the thing about adulthood is that ain't nobody coming to save you, boo. Okay. You have to learn how to think for yourself and do for yourself. And I had a friend who, she asked me once, like, Amber, why do you tell everybody your business? Like, that's how she framed it for me. And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, I noticed that when you have a decision to make, you'll ask so many people what they think. And I was about 22 maybe at the time. And I've written about this. I've talked about this before. And so the story just remains relevant here in this context. And it was the first time I think, well, not even, I think I know that anybody had called that out. And she did it lovingly. And I think she was just genuinely curious, like, why do you do that? And I was like, I mean, I just want to know what they think. But when I sat with it, I was like, oh, it's because I don't really know how to think for myself. Like, I need somebody to show me how to do this. I don't know how to build a life. And the danger with that was now I was beholden to everyone else's opinions instead of my own. And that's how sometimes not knowing how to trust your voice and your intuition can look like. You then are relegated to whatever other people tell you to do. And the thing about that is everybody's going to have an opinion, whether you do what you want to do or do what feels right to you or not. People are going to have an opinion. And so maybe I just had to learn that lesson in my own life. But the cost of living that way is you lose connection with yourself because you just don't know what it's like to decide on something and then act. And that cost is really high. I'm just, it is. You spend so much energy seeking validation and confirmation from other people, or maybe it's not a parent, but it's a partner. Who do you think about this? Or what should I do about this? And how should I do this? Or what have you? And I don't think that there's anything wrong with getting advice from people that you trust. I have a personal board of directors. These are my closest friends in my life with whom I talk to at length about things. And, but they're people who I trust and, again, whose opinions I value. But now my approach is really different because that one friend asking me all those years ago about why, in her words, I told everybody my business, but, I have a better understanding now that I just didn't know how to really trust my own instinct and judge and evaluate for myself my own choices and decisions. I had to take those little tiny baby steps to learn how to do that. And so that's what I think rebuilding trust in yourself and in your voice can start to look like. For me now at this big age, like if I ask more than two people, hey, what do you think I should do about this? That's a sign for me that I need to get still and figure out what is it that is keeping me from being confident in my choice. Like, what is the barrier? And just go inward for a second or just sit still and ask myself, well, Amber, what do you really want to do? What is the real issue here? And it took me time to learn how to do that, just to ask myself those simple questions. But that's what learning how to build trust, now maybe not even rebuild, but to just build trust in general with your voice can look like. I mean, the first step is just to start listening to it. What do you really want? What would make you happy here in this instance? Like, here's a simple example. I have a trip to go on soon for work, and I was debating on whether or not I should extend the trip for a day or two for social reasons. But I was feeling guilty about that because of the extra money it would cost for me to stay a few extra days. So I'm like trying to justify it by having it be, I need to find other business reasons to justify spending the additional money and so forth. And when I sat with myself and I had already started to ask a couple of friends, like, hey, what do you think? Do you think I should stay? Do you think I should extend it? That's an example of what I'm saying. So I literally did what I just said. And I was like, girl, what is your problem? Like, why are you not confident in this decision? And it's because I was feeling guilty about spending the extra money in my mind in a frivolous way and doing things just for pure social reasons and not feeling like it was justified at a time when I'm trying to be more fiscally responsible. And I'm not a fiscally irresponsible person, but there have been some changes in my life recently that I'm like, okay, let me, make sure that I'm just making smart money decisions. So while that came from a good place, how it was playing out was this guilt was like, oh, you're not really confident that in your own decision to just do what you want to do or do what you feel is best. So instead of asking a third person, I just had to sit with myself. So that's like a real life example of what I'm saying. And this can be the same for you too, in terms of learning how to start trusting your voice and first like activating it by pressing the mute button again to take your voice off of mute and slowly begin to turn the volume up with small decisions that are low stakes, that don't cost you a lot, that don't feel risky, but it's about learning how to practice listening to yourself and doing what feels right to you without seeking confirmation from someone else or validation from someone else. And the way that this continued to play out for me as I got older is, for example, what I was saying a moment ago about how people are going to have something to say, whether you do what you want to do or not. That's a tough lesson to learn, first off. But I remember when my oldest daughter was an infant and I was reading so many conflicting articles about how she should sleep. She naturally slept on her stomach, but all the articles said like, no, baby can't sleep on her stomach. She can suffocate. So don't ever put your baby on the stomach. And then some articles were like, don't ever put your baby on the back. And so I was so confused. Like, what do I do? And I just had to learn to trust my gut as a mom, as a new mom, and let my baby sleep how she needed to and how she naturally seemed to, keeping her crib safe. No extra bedding and, just with a fitted sheet, but no teddy bears, no a bunch of other stuff in there, nothing that could choke her or suffocate her or anything like that. And she slept fine on her stomach. But doing my research is one thing. I mean, obviously it's okay to do research so you can make an informed decision on something. But at some point you have to commit to a decision and you've got to be willing to try it out and see what happens. Because otherwise you just won't know. So my approach to mothering was like, well, what does my baby need? So while all of these articles can offer me insights, I have to pay attention to her specifically and do what I feel is best for her. So that was like another way of learning how to trust my instinct and trust my inner voice in conversation with my husband too, obviously, right? Like he's also her parent. But those are some of the ways. And now that's also a high stakes example. So I just said, start with low stakes things, but I just wanted to make sure that like I'm giving you examples from my own lived experience. And I'm just one person. You can find so many other ways and examples that might feel more relevant or resonant to you. But I hope that you get the heart of what I'm trying to say, which is you can just take these tiny steps with building trust through action and not through waiting, not through going through your spin cycle, not through overthinking. I'm an overthinker. So if you are too, hey girl, I see you. It's okay. I always say that overthinking is not your enemy. Inaction is. At some point, you have to decide, you have to make the decision, and you have to take the step forward. You have to act. So there's nothing wrong with overthinking, but at some point, you can't stay in the spin cycle forever. You have to get out of it by actually making a decision and acting on it. So that trust is built by learning how to listen to yourself and then acting on whatever you hear yourself say internally. You know, my mother used to say this phrase like, oh, I should have followed my first mind. Have you heard this saying before? I should have followed my first mind, because your first mind often is your gut. It is your instinct telling you what to do. And then when you don't follow your first mind, something happens and you're like, damn it, I should have followed my first mind. I should have done what I wanted to do in the first place. So that's kind of what I'm getting at here. And the more you do this, the more you honor your voice, the stronger it gets. And now you know that it's not going to always be smooth sailing every time. Okay. It's not. You're going to speak up and someone's not going to be okay with the decision that you made. And you're going to have to be okay with them not being okay. The other person's not going to always agree with you, or things may not go the way you thought they were going to go. Sometimes following your first mind doesn't turn out the way that you thought it would. And you just have to be prepared for that, and don't let it deter you from trying it again, because I want you to create and build and design a life that is true to who you are and who you want to be and the things that you say that you want. And if you only listen to what other people think that you should do and who you should be and what you should wear or who you should date and this, that, and the third, you'll end up living someone else's version of your life. Now, I'm not trying to talk myself out of job security, okay, because for a lot of my clients, that's the circumstance that they find themselves in. Like, oh my God, I'm living a version of my life that doesn't feel authentic to me. So then they come to me to help them. So, you know, hey, I'm not trying to talk myself out of a job through this podcast. But if you're on that kind of journey, I really want that for you. I want you to have words well said for a life well lived, which is the name of my business. Well, the name of my company is called Words Well Said, but the tagline is for a life well lived. And a life well lived is one that is custom made for you. And that is one where you are comfortable with using your voice loudly and proudly when you need to, that you turn away from self-doubt and you turn toward self-trust. And you allow yourself to want what you want, knowing that your desires are not wrong. And a life where you learn how to listen to your body and to your intuition, because the body will send you signals. Your heart is beating fast for a reason, sis. Those headaches are coming for a reason. I talk about this in almost every episode, because your body will let you know what's up. So you've got to learn to pay attention to that. As soon as I decided about the trip and whether or not to extend it, once I made a decision, my shoulders relaxed some. And I was like, yeah, this feels right to me. And that's beautiful. I never want to get tired of that feeling of like, yeah, this feels good to me. I don't want my shoulders to be all hunched up and creeping up towards my ears because I'm so stressed about making a decision. I know how to trust myself. I know that my desires aren't wrong. And I know that I can honor myself by speaking up and using my voice. So that's what I want to offer to you this week. Practice saying, I trust myself. It's safe to want what I want. My voice deserves to be heard. I trust myself. It's safe to want what I want. And my voice deserves to be heard. That's your homework for the week. So practice saying it however you need it. And if you need some more help, give me a call. I am available, honey, to help you on your journey through coaching. You can go to wordswellsaid.com/coaching for more information about that. And I'll mention that again in the outro. But thank you for listening today. Hopefully this was helpful to you, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to Say More. If this episode hit home for you, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another one. And don't forget to share it with your group chat so all of y'all can level up together. If you want personalized support about today's topic, visit wordswellsaid.com to learn more about how to work with me for coaching or how you can book me to speak at your job, conference, or event. In the meantime, keep in touch with me online at Dr. Amber Wright. And until you hear from me again, remember to use your words and then go forth and be awesome.